tests and exams. All right, and then I gave you the maid in the hotel room story. So I want to flip to something because now I want to tell you how I'm approaching this issue. Before I do that, let me do a reality check. Do you all see what the problem is when we talk about cybersecurity? And do you agree that that's a problem, that that's an issue? Okay. How many of you have ever felt like you've had your data accessed and you just got a bad feeling or you couldn't figure out if it had really happened? So has anybody had their identity stolen? Okay, and you know what it's like to go through, right? So I said I pulled out something from the 80s, and in the 80s when I was working on integrated systems, I found the notion of something called the Zachman framework, and I'm putting his up to give him proper credit. John Zachman retired from IBM many years ago, and I don't know if you can read this, and what we're trying to do in our current work is organize a framework. Okay, and the framework's going to give us a roadmap for truly implementing security. Our idea is to produce a book that anybody can read. If you go to Barnes & Noble's, you can get a book on network security, you can get a book on encryption, you can get a book on this. But we have yet to find one book that says, here's how you handle the whole environment. So Zachman, and I'm not saying we're going to follow this directly, but the problem is in my framework, one is I haven't got it fully developed to show you. Two is it's three-dimensional, and I'm not a visual graphics type person. But basically what Zachman realized was take the what, how, where, who, when, and why. Okay? And then look at that the problems with integration was that you couldn't show the whole enterprise type system. And so if you go down the rows, you go from more general to more specific. So he starts by saying, what are we talking about? At the top level, what do we mean by data? Right? The next level, our business model, how do we handle data? What does that mean in relationship to how we do our business? When we go down, as we go further down, we get more in the technical weeds. Okay? We go through the system and the technology and the like. There's a couple things you quickly tell you about this. First of all is, what the framework gave us was an organizing, overarching way to look at different levels of detail at once. Second one is, we could change things and understand some of the impact in the system. So you could change some of your technology, right? Or you could change maybe how you do your business and keep the rest of it intact. And when people began to understand this, then they began to understand that when I talk about data, and I'm at a management level, talk about data and you're a system designer, and you talk about data and you're an implementer, we're talking about three different things. So part of what we're trying to do with our work is come up with this kind of architecture, but for integrated security. Oops, got to go flip back. Okay, now what are the advantages of what I just showed you? One, it's dynamic. The world changes. Right? It could be that somebody comes up with an encryption algorithm tomorrow that is unbeatable. We can plug that in the technology part. It could be that the nature of my business changes, and I can change that at a higher level. It could be the way I view the visibility of the impact. Okay, what happens? What happens when there's a failure in the people mode, let's say? How does that affect, or a failure in the technology mode? Where does that fit into the framework? So part of the advantages is we can add and modify technology. We can incorporate new ways of doing business. We can add and change business rules. And we have achieved what I'm hoping to be is more of an integrated security in the environment. Now, how do we do this? How do we do this? As I asked you before, most of you are engineers. If I ask you to give me an assessment for how you would do security on a computer or a network or communication protocol, you could probably give me a good definition, right, or a good process. How do we do it in the softer areas? How do we do it when we're talking about people? Have any of you are familiar with the name Kevin Mitnick, correct? The hacker. Have any of you read any of his work on social engineering? Okay, where he was a 12-year-old, got started as a 12-year-old streetcar smart kid that could get free bus rides wherever he wanted, and he developed this expertise. How do you figure out that? That's not something you'd write up like you're going to write up a communication protocol for computer networks. Right? So basically the way you get started, and I'm just giving you this to kind of give you the idea of what I mean by a roadmap and framework, is we begin to assess the inventory of where we are. But when we talk about the inventory, we're going to talk about, and I've got this in a later slide, specifics, not only in the electronic, but in the physical. And then we ask ourselves, when we've got to know where we are, what are you trying to do? You know, what's required for either compliance or secure networks? Then you come up with how am I going to get there? And to do that, you develop alternatives. And this is something I think it's hard to understand when you're a student and easier to understand after you've had about 10 years in the working world. Sometimes you come up with a great idea. You can make a system 99.9% secure, and your company won't buy it. Why? Because it might cost them $1 million for what they consider to be a small amount of risk. So they make the computer system 98% secure, and they save themselves $1 million. All right? So when we go through this roadmap, we're asking ourselves, okay, where are we? Where do we want to be? How much is it going to cost us? I think there's still a virus that gets released around Christmas that runs on desktops. It used to be, and it basically shut your desktop down. It didn't shut your laptop down. Basically, it said it's Christmas Day, go home, and then it turned your system off. Okay? Didn't do this on laptops. Apparently, there was somebody who really thought everyone should be at home with their family on Christmas. Now, you know, on your laptop, maybe they felt like you were sitting in front of the Christmas tree with your laptop, right? Every year, there was a new variation of this. All right? Companies would look at it and say, okay, how do we prevent this? It would cost too much money, and they'd say, okay, we accept the risk. If you're going to be here Christmas, this may happen, so it's a cost-benefit trade-off. All right? And then you basically choose your solution, implement, obtain feedback, repeat. Okay. As you get in the real world, you're going to find out these aren't step-by-step processes. These are more what I call phases, because you're going to be changing your policy at the same time you're developing your cost alternatives. Now, let's kind of, I want to hear from you guys. Let's kind of relate this to what you're thinking or what you want to do. All right? Do you see this kind of go on as a roadmap? Does this make sense to you? Where do you see your part of the world kind of fitting into this? Do you see anything wrong with it? Please, if you see something wrong with it, you might give me an idea that helps my book sell better when it's written.
Where does the human factor fall into this roadmap?
That's a good question. First of all through it, but second of all, mostly with your policies. Okay?
What about, does that take into account?
Let me go. Let me go one more.
Okay.
It says personnel.
Yeah.
Okay? Because unfortunately, don't take this personally, we're all people, but we're the weakest link. Okay, this is, if you read, 5 pages of Mitnick's book, you get this, right? I find out your name and your account number for the gas company, or he could, and within a few minutes of talking to different people on the phone, he's got access to your credit history. All right? Did any of those people know they were giving out information that was going to breach security? No, because they gave out a little bit of information. Now, what if I give out your name and account number? Well, what if I give out your name and your address? Well, what if this and what if this? Okay? Here are the threats and vulnerabilities that we've looked at so far. You can read the list, but basically, who is that person? What do we know about them? Where are they from? What country are they from? There's one theory that says some of the break-ins that have occurred of naturalized citizens who unfortunately have had their family members back in their home countries threatened. In process and out process. That basically means you bring people into the company and things are usually rosy, and then when you ask them to leave, there's a reason why they try to get you out of there as quick as they can, on one hand. On the other hand, how do they know you haven't already planted something? What's allowed and not allowed in the workplace? Can I have my cell phone? What am I going to do if I take pictures in the workplace? What am I going to do with them? Who works there?